Hey, it's Ed here. I want to talk about greed, power, and ego and how it applies to addiction. Kind of an odd combination, but you'll see where I'm going with this. See, 100 years ago, there was a guy, his name was Harry J. Anslinger, and he was the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. And it was his mission to eradicate the drug epidemic in those poor, wretched people who were struggling with addiction. And he was ego-driven, but he also had a past. And why he set out on this mission is he had someone in his past that struggled with addiction, and he would hear them scream when they were going through withdrawals. And there was actually a book out that's called Chasing the Scream, and a great book, talks about how the drug epidemic or the war on drugs started really 100 years ago. And so he went after all the doctors, because 100 years ago there were many drugs that were legal that are no longer legal now, like heroin. A doctor could actually prescribe heroin back then because we didn't have, the OxyContin that came along 50 years later. So what people were, when they were in chronic pain, they went and got their prescription for heroin. But what happened is he went after all of these doctors and destroyed their lives. Many ended up in prison. Their families were destroyed. Their lives were ruined. They were bankrupt. And, he was very successful. But it became a power thing for him. And he had to create new purpose. He had to go to Congress and say, this is what I'm doing, this is my purpose, and this is how I'm making the world better. He wasn't. He was destroying many, many lives. And but what really was happening is he had the full weight of the government behind him, but he also had the full weight of the drug dealers, the illegal dealers behind him. They were really rooting him on and supporting him, because when they knew that if someone could no longer get their drugs from the doctor, they're going to go to illegal sources. And now, because they were hooked, now the drug dealers were, made a great market for them. So they were happy to support him. So fast forward to June of 1971, when Nixon declared the war on drugs. And he said, we are going to make the world a better place. We're going to get rid of all this illegal drug trade. And they went after all the drug lords, and they were burning poppy fields and just spending tons of money. So since the war on drugs, we've spent $2 trillion. And you know what we've gotten out of it? Nothing. More people are dying today than ever. So why are we spending $2 trillion to fight the supply when we should be focused on the demand? Because right now, in 2017, we had 72,000 people die from drug overdose. That's 197 people a day. Imagine if an airline fell out of the sky, an airplane, a jumbo jet fell out of the sky every single day, crashed, and killed everybody on board. The government wouldn't stop flying. They would solve the problem. But yet, that's not what they do with the drug epidemic. And until you solve the demand with proper treatment, you're going to continue to have jumbo jets fall out of the sky every single day. So private treatment is very expensive. The government steps in and said, with Medicare and Medicaid, we'll start paying for substance abuse treatment. Unfortunately, whenever you get the government involved, they do things quite wrong. Here we've been screaming that 28, 30-day programs were not enough because you're dealing with the brain rewiring and usually co-occurring disorder. They're struggling now with mental illness and addiction, whether they had mental illness or before they had addiction. They certainly have it now. But the government steps in and says we'll pay for a 21-day program. Now they've cut down to 14-day programs. That's not going to do anything, because if they're Medicare and Medicaid step in to pay for this, they don't want to spend a lot of money, so they pay very little for a 21-day program. So you don't have many people stepping up to provide treatment because they're not going to make any money. And now the treatment's not long enough, and it's actually killing people. And why I'm saying treatment is killing people is because even if you have a 28-day program, you got someone coming out of treatment and they feel great because their brain is actually functioning. It's no longer over-medicated. And the first time they hit a stumbling block, an obstacle, or what we call trigger, they say, geez, I just need some relief. You know, I mean, how many people come home from a rough day and they say, I need a drink? Well, magnify that by 100-fold with someone who is addicted to drugs or alcohol. And now if they're addicted to heroin, they say, I just need a little bit just to get me by. I'll get over this. I'll use it once. Well, what happens is now their tolerance is down because their body's adjusted to not having all those drugs in their system, and they go out and they use the same amount that they started or that they were using before they went into treatment, and it kills them because the body doesn't have the tolerance. Or it's laced with fentanyl, which is even worse. And here's what's really crazy is you got people out there that are chasing that high, that first high that they got when they first started using heroin, and they hear about people dying from fentanyl, and they say, I got to get some of that. That must be a really good high if it's killing people. And I know people who don't understand substance use disorder are going, well, that's crazy. And you're right, it is crazy. But what happens is our brain is wired to search for that next high, that better high, and it's screaming until we get that high. Many times it just kills you. So, we got this treatment, and I hear people talk about, well, there's a treatment center on every corner. Well, if that's the case, then why is it that the governing body for the government says that only 11% of those who need treatment ever get it? 11%. And then out of that 11%, 80% fail. So we spent $2 trillion on the war on drugs. We've got no benefit out of it. Our treatment is too short, and only 11% actually get help. We have an 80% failure rate. Imagine that. A car manufacturer makes a car and it has an 80% failure rate. So would you buy that car? So why are people going to treatment? Because it doesn't work. Because it's not long enough. So, and there's a waiting list. And, you give an addict, you tell them, oh, geez, I have to wait 2 weeks to even get my gain assessment to be able to qualify to get Medicaid or Medicare funded treatment. And then there's another waiting list that's going to be 2-3 weeks, maybe a month out. So I'm looking at a month and a half. Forget it. That's what happens. They just stop. They stop looking for treatment. So now, in the news the last couple days, you've seen where they're arresting doctors and distributors of OxyContin and hydrocodone and other pain meds, and they're forcing doctors to stop prescribing medication. Who's that going to hurt? Those struggling with chronic pain. Where are they going to get help? Does this sound like what happened 100 years ago, where they stopped prescribing pain medication because they said it was dangerous? How about if we start treating people properly? If you put someone on pain medication, give them proper treatment so they don't become addicted, or if they do become addicted, we have a program to get them off of that addiction. It's greed, people. The pharmaceuticals make billions of dollars prescribing drugs. And now we're going after them because it's killing people, but yet the government spends $2 trillion fighting the war on drugs. Does this at all seem backwards? And here's the other thing. So the government decides that a good source of revenue is make marijuana legal in many states. And if you go through all of the process and pay all of the fees and licensing and everything to set up a legal pot farm, now you have to grow a crop and you have to make a profit because that's what business does. The government, take California for example, if you go through all that process of becoming licensed, you have to pay your taxes based on your potential to grow a crop, not on the actual crop that you grow, but on your potential. So your taxes may be $200,000-$300,000 a year. Well, 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 20 pot farms in California are legal. You have all the rest of them that are not paying those taxes. They're rolling the dice. Are they going to get caught? But there's so many of them. There's hundreds of them. And the DEA and FBI and Sheriff's Department, they can't keep up. So these illegal pot farms are now flooding the market with marijuana. And we don't know what the strength is. We don't know where it came from. We don't know what pesticides, what they're lacing it with. We know nothing about it. So the government's trying to control a market that is out of control because we're addressing it from the wrong end. So what happens now with this flooding of the market? The prices get driven down because of all the illegal pot flooding the market, because once it's in the hand of the end user, the cops can't tell if it's legal or not. As far as they're concerned, it's legal. They can't tell. There's no barcode on it. So the market gets flooded. Now the legal growers can't afford to stay in business. The government has taken, all the taxes from them. Now they go out of business and the cycle continues. And oh, by the way, remember when they sold us this bill of goods that, hey, if we legalize marijuana, all the tax money will go to treatment and education and fund our public schools? That's crap. That never happens. That money gets allocated to the public schools. Their budget never increases. Why? Because they add this money from here and then they take it away from over here. So the schools lose either way. Now we have more kids smoking pot. Now we have teachers who are being laid off because their funding isn't where it should be, but yet the government mandates that we have to fund this, certain level of education, and it's a vicious cycle. So until we address this properly, we're going to continue this cycle. So you can see where the greed, ego, and power comes in. It's the power of the politicians trying to get votes. The greed is the illegal drug trade versus the legal drug trade. And the ego is everyone. Everyone has an ego, and they're attached to that ego. Whether you're the doctor, the lawyer, the government, the politician, there's your ego. So we've created a society that is driven by greed, power, and ego, and it's funding addiction. So we need to start doing things right. Don't cut people off that are needing pain meds. Treat the symptom. You're not going to stop flying planes because one falls out of the air. So you're not going to stop people from having pain because the pain medication is causing an addiction. Treat the addiction and the pain. Don't make people suffer. Don't continue to let people die. Chronic pain for many people is so debilitating that they take their own lives. Is that what you want?